So I went back.
It's not about winning, it's about getting to the truth.
What I would like to see is freedom for me as a patient.
That's one of the things that RFK and the MAHA movement represents.
He's clearly being demonized by the media.
Do you know why he did it?
Yes.
Why?
I can quote you word for word why he did it.
I'm not arguing with you. I agree conflict of
you
research
flip the switch
exists.
so fast and then it's like,
But I
whoa, this
agree
is
with
intense.
you.
I
Aren't
disagree
you
with
mad at that?
I absolutely am, because I care about people.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike, and today I'm surrounded by 15 RFK Jr. supporters.
When I asked people whether or not I should go back to do Jubilee again, most people said no. They said, you already showed yourself to be an empathetic doctor. The content might get too repetitive. You already showed the best side of yourself. What are you gonna get by continuing to argue with people who disagree with you? People in general are pretty down on Jubilee. In fact, I've done multiple interviews with legitimate outlets, Vanity Fair, PBS NewsHour, where it seemed like the people that were writing the pieces had a negative view of this series as a whole, as if having these types of debates were not valuable and actually problematic to society. This is where I disagree. I think that there is tremendous value in having conversations with people who disagree with you, as long as they're done respectfully, of course, because there have been episodes where people just get into this name calling thing, and I'm not a fan of those episodes, but that's gonna happen when you have two parties that are in disagreement. I thought my first episode was great in that I was able to lend an empathetic ear. I was able to provide factual information to people who may have otherwise not been exposed to it. You think about individuals who have been tricked by misinformation, especially when it came to vaccines. I thought I needed to be there for them. So I think the first episode was certainly a win, but I do take some of the criticism to heart and agree with that perhaps I was a bit too passive in the first conversation, that I was perhaps too patient and therefore missed some opportunities.
Is, I think, a tremendous disservice when somebody rattles off all of this and then Mike jumps straight to taking one thing they said and trying to validate them on it.
I agreed with that, and I thought I could be more direct going back for round two. And I thought round two could be valuable to focus on an issue that I believe is plaguing the United States. And that issue is the appointment of RFK Jr. into the Secretary of Health and Human Services position. I asked them to gather individuals who supported him, those who are part of the MAHA movement, those who just love him as an individual, who love his policies. And I said, I want to debate these, but I want to debate them a little bit more direct. I want to be a little bit more provocative. And there were actually times during the debate where I raised my voice, which was a little uncomfortable for me. You know, being a doctor who's trying to be as level-headed as possible all the time, that's not a position that I normally find myself in. I never raise my voice with patients, and I feel like these conversations are similar in that way, in that they should be kept very respectful. But at the same time, I thought it was valuable to show the level of passion that not only I feel, but my colleagues have been feeling for a very long time. In watching it back myself, I thought I did a pretty good job balancing being an active, empathetic, attentive listener with going to bat for my colleagues, science researchers, science in general, and allowing people just to see the flip side of the conversation, but being a good person, meaning that the people who I was disagreeing with, I didn't want them to hate me, because I felt like if we created a hateful relationship right at the outset, no one's mind would be changed. No one would get any meaningful value out of these interactions. And it actually worked quite well. Even walking in, I think I made a joke sitting down at the chair, which last time I didn't. I was so nervous. This time I was a little more comfortable, made a joke about the government shutdown. Everyone laughed. It kind of put everyone in a better place. And then as feedback started coming in, I saw comments from some of my colleagues, and it got me a little bit upset. It pulled at the heartstring, because right now in the healthcare community, especially those who are trying their best to put out evidence-based content, we're all on the same page. We're all trying to do the best that we can. We all have different ways of doing this. I have the YouTube channel, the podcast. We do silly videos with meme reviews, more serious, hard-hitting interviews with people who've been impacted by MAHA. Other people make TikTok videos, dancing with hula hoops, whatever it is. Everyone has their own little strategy. And I think that's great. I think that's the power of social media. But then when our own group starts attacking each other, that's where I feel like we're setting ourselves back, especially because the criticism that was put forth here, I think is similar to the criticism I heard starting my social media platforms. The doctors that first heard about my wishes to put out evidence-based content on social media were saying it's not valuable, it's not professional, it's not gonna help anyone, you're not changing anyone's mind. When I see comments like this about the format being bad, I feel like it's in a similar vein. It's judgmental in a way that I don't believe is beneficial to the cause of evidence-based medicine. These Jubilee debates oftentimes devolve into shouting matches, disagreements where no one comes together. I see why people criticize that. But if you took a 5-minute watch, a 10-minute watch, a 30-minute watch, if you were gracious enough to watch the entire episode, you'd see that this episode was far from that. Humans saw other humans across from them. They heard one another out. We agreed, we disagreed, we had some commonalities. Ultimately, I think that's a win. Bringing people together to discuss issues is a huge win. And what surprised me most is almost the ending of the debate. People came up to me that were debating me, thanking me for my time, for my honesty, saying that I'm different than most doctors. And while I take this compliment, I have to remind them that the doctors that they have painted in their minds, or perhaps have had negative experiences with, do not represent the entirety of the healthcare profession. We want to do better as a majority. We want to be there for our patients. Sometimes the healthcare system gets in the way. So at the end of the day, it's less about holding our noses up in the air and saying, you shouldn't be on social media. You shouldn't be in these debates. You shouldn't be on Fox and Friends, Dr. Mike, because they spread misinformation. Hold on a second. Bad actors are going on Fox and Friends and spreading misinformation. Don't you want me on there to replace those people, get better ratings for Fox and Friends so that they can then get accurate information, the audience get accurate information? So that's my thoughts on that. I'm curious about your take. I asked about this in my Instagram stories, and I was actually pleasantly surprised to see the amount of support that I got. These days, it's hard to find support on social media, given the fact that we don't do the whole parasocial thing on this channel, but cool to see nonetheless. The biggest value that I brought to this episode, I think, was highlighting blind spots that perhaps the panelists didn't even realize they had. Whether it was highlighting the fact that RFK Jr. is still getting legal fees, but they're just being sent to his son.
He's getting money. How is that
He has
impacting his
gotten
decisions?
money in the past. He doesn't take payments anymore. He can't. And
Do you
so
know who's taking payments on his behalf?
You're probably gonna say his wife.
His son.
And the participants didn't even know the Maha report existed, and they didn't know that some of the data in it was completely fabricated. The sources were fully made up, like AI hallucination level.
Did you see the first Maha report that he put out?
I did not know.
7 sources, fully made up, about research that was never done. When it reached out to the authors, that they listed their reasoning for why they were
There's no
making
way
certain
that's-
recommendations.
And then finally, the point about they believe that our system sucks with transparency, a point of which I agree with. They then believe RFK Jr. is bringing back that level of transparency, when in reality, he just is ending a period of public comment, like I pointed out to this gentleman.
Every time HHS enacts a new policy since 1946, they had a period of waiting for public comment, for people who are stakeholders to talk about how this policy will impact them. Guess what Secretary Kennedy ended this year for the first time since 1946?
Do you know why he did it?
Yes.
Why?
I can quote you word for word why he did it.
Okay, so my understanding
No,
is
no,
that-
I'm gonna read
okay.
it to you. It's not needed, and it's not very effective.
I think the biggest and most shocking thing is I agreed with so much that the participants had to say.
That's interesting because in some ways I agree with your statement.
the prescription given by a doctor, and I think this is a major problem, and you guys have
I agree,
broken trust.
and I think I agree with everyone here on that. You know what's wild? I agree with you.
I think we agree on so
He's
much.
not making the reform.
Yeah, well, in the federal,
Like, I think in general, the people who support RFK, perhaps even the Maha movement, want the same things that doctors want. And once we realized we're on the same team, I was able to present a little bit of a different take from my perspective because they're giving it from their patient perspective and I'm giving it from the doctor perspective. And I wanted them to reflect upon that to see that I'm not the enemy. Just rattling off a couple of things that we completely agreed upon during this debate. Chronic diseases are on the rise. Lifestyle changes are a big part of it. But as someone who's actually in the trenches and treating patients, it's not so easy to create sustainable behavior change. So when someone says just work out, on an individual level, that sounds great. But for a doctor who's trying to motivate a patient, that's very hard because patients come with all sorts of situations alongside them. The fact that the system sucks and has hurt some of them, I completely understand. I criticize the system probably more than anyone on YouTube because of how problematic it is in getting people affordable care, quality care, transparency, during their care, the administrative burden that comes with it. The fact that conflicts of interest exist. That's true, and we need to call it out when it happens, especially when it's hidden. But we need to call out conflicts of interest when they happen on side A and side B. And the final one is the point that's probably most tired is we messed up during COVID. I get it, we could have done better. We as a healthcare system messed up, as a government we messed up. This is a worldwide phenomenon where no one knew what the heck was going on. And as a result, we didn't handle it perfectly. We have videos on this channel covering what we did wrong, what we could do better, how do we learn from it, multiple podcast guests, and I think we'll continue to do that. I think the participants were shocked that I was someone who was willing to concede those points. But what doesn't make sense to me as a physician is that when we say, make America healthy again, is insinuating at some point we were healthier than we are now. And I don't know what time period we want to go back to, but I certainly don't want to go back to the times before pharma, before antibiotics, before we knew how to perform surgeries and have medical devices and stenting and all this stuff. So when we say healthy again, I don't know what time frame we're looking at. And when we look at data, a lot of the participants would point out that chronic health diseases are on the rise. I agree. And I think this is a societal problem, not necessarily a medical problem. The disconnect was in those scenarios was people didn't see that we've actually made tremendous strides in helping people manage certain conditions. Whereas in the past, they may have acutely died of those issues. So that while chronic health diseases have gone up, we have to remember that when someone used to have a heart attack and we had no treatments for them, they would die. So now we're allowing people to survive their first heart attack, they become chronic health patients. The fact that we've been able to better manage chronically these conditions, we're seeing better mortality numbers, but perhaps worse chronic health numbers. And that's a very unique problem in healthcare. Because for every condition you solve or cure you create, you actually end up creating a new problem. If you look at our relatives that only lived to age 20 or 30, perhaps they didn't have issues with skin cancer because they didn't live long enough to experience skin cancer. If you think about those same individuals and their dental health, they didn't live long enough to develop all the dental problems that living into your 70s, 80s, 90s can cause. I think we need to really understand when we make an argument, why we're making the argument, what the flaws of our arguments are. And that's what science does. And I think that's what makes science beautiful. We're always trying to critique ourselves, critique our thoughts in order to make them better. And the common misunderstanding that I felt within this group, within the previous debate, within just my time and talking on social media, is that people have a misunderstanding of what science is. They think science is coming up with a theory and trying to prove that theory true. But the correct way to practice science is coming up with a theory and doing everything in your power and reaching out to others through peer review to try and disprove your theory. And the more times people fail, the stronger your theory becomes. And then finally, what I realized is that these individuals, the individuals from the previous Jubilee debate, they've just had poor encounters with the healthcare system, not enough quality encounters with good providers. I was telling them how when I see a patient, I ask them questions in order to help improve their lifestyle by encouraging exercise, dietary changes. I screen them for intimate partner violence, mental health issues, sleep apnea. They were like, oh my God, Dr. Mike, that's only because you're a great doctor. No. That's what's supposed to happen. And it killed me inside that these individuals were mad because they weren't getting what they're supposed to be getting, so they think we need to destroy the system as a whole. Where instead what we need to do is re-up the enforcement and make sure that people are getting the quality of healthcare that we know is possible. But simply yelling into the abyss that bias exists in healthcare, so throw it all away, doesn't actually help anyone, because at the end of the day, as I said in the episode, if someone collapses, they'd expect me to help. And they think it's because I took an oath. I frankly don't care about the oath. I just want to help people. That is my goal as a doctor, not because I took the oath, but because I love my profession. Once they understood my point of view, suddenly shoulders lowered. They were less aggressive. They were smiling more. And that is the hallmark of a quality discussion.
I honestly am not coming here just gung-ho. I want to learn from you. I think
That's
you are
amazing. I
here in
appreciate
good
that.
faith. I don't think that you're a bad man just trying to win the argument. And trust me, I've sat in this chair where that's exactly what the person in the other seat wants to do.
And I've had students over the last few months ask me what strategies I employ in debating people and changing their minds. There are no strategies here. The only strategy that I use is a strategy that I use on myself to remind myself that people have different experiences. And it's my job as a doctor who spent all these years studying to understand where those people are coming from, to understand where their knowledge base comes from, to allow them to feel seen and be validated in their experiences. And then once I earn their trust, because I'm genuinely curious, I'm not doing it as a strategy, then they become a little bit more open to hear what I have to say. And I feel like that is the win. The win is to see a little bit more eye to eye, to agree that we both have good intentions, and from there we can build upon and find sources of agreement. And what I'll say is multiple participants shared positive feedback to me during the debate, after the debate, posting on their Instagram stories about the debate, highlighting how they've learned so much. There were people who were learning things about the Maha movement, so much so that they feel like it's being undermined currently. That's their own statements from people who work within the Maha network.
It feels like there's sabotage in the administration.
Okay.
Straight up.
So when doctors, non-doctors message me saying this is a waste of time, those people are stupid, I think you're wrong. I think that the evidence does not agree with you. I think the outcomes of debates and conversations like this largely outweigh the positives if you approach them with the mindset that you are not better than anybody, that you too can be flawed, that we all are capable of experiencing bias, and that there is something to be learned even for me as a doctor from these individuals. Again, I'm not perfect. I think I'm still learning in this scenario, but I think at least we're putting ourselves out there. And better late than never, because for the people that criticize me and say that I'm giving these anti-vaxxers or these RFK supporters a platform, folks, you need to wake up, because the platforms they have are the White House, the CDC, HHS, FDA. If we're not gonna start breaking bread in a Jubilee debate, how do we ever feel it's gonna be possible in the legislature or at the CDC headquarters? Speaking of conflicts of interest, did you know that I turned down a multi-million-dollar TV deal not too long ago? Click here to check that out, and as always, stay happy and healthy.